Good evening, Galaxy fans. Hello, everybody. Hope you're doing well. My name is Mike Gray. I cover both the Galaxy and LAFC for the Striker. Here with me tonight is my faithful co-host, my good buddy Alex Ruiz. How you doing, man?
I'm good, Mike. How you doing?
Oh, I'm doing amazing, dude. My confidence is through the roof. You see this sweet shirt that I got? It's amazing. One, two threads. Everybody knows is the brand if you want to get Galaxy gear. And Jamie, he actually did me a solid and sent me this shirt, and I'm extremely thankful, man. So thank you so much for that. He's actually got an email newsletter where he talks about like his job. He's a tour manager, which I mean is super cool. And but he, every once in a while he gives us insight into his life and his job, and it's just super cool. He's a very creative dude. So thanks, Jamie. I'm doing great. I'm sure the Galaxy fan base is doing great after getting a W over LAFC. Let's see. Before we get started tonight, there was one thing that I wanted to get to. Last week we were talking about expansion, MLS San Diego. We were having a lot of fun on this pod, and I didn't want to drag it down with my little rant. So I just kind of let it go. But, before we talk about Trafico, I just kind of, not even a rant, but, I wanted to sort of clarify. Let's just get to it. When the when MLS decided to make the announcement last week, we were talking about writing a story. The story for me was, all right, how's the city going to handle this with the loyal? Is there going to be this? Because if you're online, there's this sort of narrative that the billionaire came into town, and now the loyal are in trouble and potentially because they have competition, and there's this narrative, right? And I got to tell you, like Alex, I was disappointed because I drove down to San Diego. I had my narrative. I was happy, but something happened, which is, I talked to fans, I talked to supporters groups, I talked to players. I even talked to locals at the Chili Pepper show. And what they all had in common is that they were all just super stoked just to have an MLS team in the first place. Like, I didn't sense any animosity at all. In fact, I heard a lot of reasoning about, oh, well, if you have, the loyal in a minor league team, 8,000 fans, now you're going to have 35,000 fans every week filling that stadium. Most people just saw it as a plus that the two teams can coexist, so on, et cetera. My second point, Landon Donovan and majority shareholder guy, because I forgot his name, but they're not billionaires. Like, this isn't a situation where they could have potentially brought a team to MLS. As it is, MLS going to San Diego was a bit of a, everyone was talking about Vegas, and then they didn't go through, and then, the San Diego just kind of at the last minute, in the span of a few months, just overtook that bid. And, that was a close one. So, again, I don't know if they didn't show up and, Mansour and his ownership group showed up. It's not as if Landon and majority shareholder guy would have brought in a team to MLS. And then the last point, which is Jimmy Conrad, he's got a podcast, and this is where it gets very interesting because apparently, I don't know how if it's fact or whatever, but he mentioned it, so I think it's legitimate. He brought up the fact that about a year ago, the ownership group actually approached Landon and majority shareholder guy and said, hey, you want to come on board? And apparently, the rumor is that they told him to quote F off. And who knows how true that is? I'm not reporting it as fact, but all those things combined, I do think it sucks that the San Diego Loyal could potentially move, or not move, but I do think that the whole situation sucks for them personally, but it's not as bad as I thought. So I just, if there are people who want the Loyal to stay, if there's just angry fans, like, you got to point them in my direction because I haven't seen them yet. So I just want to get to the bottom of that, and that's where I'm at with that situation. So, all right, moving on. El Trafico. The Galaxy defeated LAFC. It's interesting, Alex. For the when we do this on YouTube, I got to put up a graphic, and I put up the graphic of like the exclusive Sunset Club. They have this like little like pool. It's pretty sweet. I'm sure drunk people have tried swimming in it, but it kind of looks like a kiddie pool, which I think was a kind of a metaphor for the team because LAFC were basically a bunch of kids, and I got to tell you. I think Tarundalo played it safe, but I also think that he made the right move 100%. LAFC are 180 minutes away from winning the CONCACAF Champions League. You win the CONCACAF Champions League, you qualify for the Club World Cup. You qualify for 2 years of the Club World Cup under the new format. That's 6 games over the course of 3 years abroad. Now, that I don't know how an MLS team can do a better job of just making their just announcement on the global stage. But I mean, for if you're the Galaxy and that was your sort of bread and butter, is that at least you're still a global team. So for LAFC, that's one thing. The other thing is that I thought our good friend Justin Ruderman, the whole he writes for LAFC now for us, and we had the discussion: can LAFC replicate their game model? And I'm telling you, their attack had 4 first teamers, 2 academy kids. And, Alex, I'm going to let you take over once I finish because I've been talking a lot. But for me, it was very interesting because usually when you have the superior veteran team versus the inexperienced youth team, usually the first half is the veterans just sort of, asserting their dominance. They score a few goals. Second half, you see the younger, inexperienced team just sort of get into the game a little bit. And then all of a sudden, by the end, they're the one threatening, almost like those early like MLS, like CONCACAF Champions League matchups. But this was sort of the reverse. The first half was LAFC's kids just dominating. I mean, if it wasn't for Jonathan Klinsmann with that like brilliant double save, LAFC would have been ahead in the first half, and then the second half is where the Galaxy took over.
Yeah, I mean, the LAFC team comprised mostly of their MLS Next squad. Like you said, they did have a couple of first teamers on their attack, not like first team starters, but like guys coming off the bench that are still very high quality players. Nonetheless, like you still have to give them their respect for the fact that LAFC do have a very deep roster in the attack. So yeah, I think it was a surprise, but not really considering how this Galaxy team makes mistakes. They give the ball up in very bad areas, and at times they just seem so disjointed. And I think LAFC really took advantage of that, getting the ball into the Galaxy's half, and starting attacks there. Luckily, the inexperience of those attackers and midfielders kind of was what kind of hindered the LAFC, in my opinion, from scoring a goal in those situations. I think Jonathan Klinsmann almost had a moment where he was stripped from the ball, and that led to something. I think somebody got a block on that play. But the Galaxy emergency defense kind of held up a little bit. Got to give them credit too. Jonathan Klinsmann as well made some big saves, commanding that back line as well. So, it wasn't perfect first 45 minutes for the LA Galaxy. And definitely was a little worrying, in my opinion, at the start. You kind of did see LAFC kind of build a little bit of momentum. I mean, obviously, Ricky Puig missing a penalty in the first half definitely kind of deflated some of the feeling for the LA Galaxy in the first half. And I think I was like, oh my gosh, it's this again where we're dealing with a penalty. Who's the penalty taker now? I don't even know who to think. I mean, for me, Dejan Jovic is the penalty taker, but obviously he's not a starter, so kind of leaves you to who else. I mean, if Chicharito can't put him in, Ricky Puig can't put him in. I mean, Gaston Brugman, I guess. That'd be my assessment. I know Mark Tagado's hit a penalty before for the LA Galaxy, so he's a guy to keep in mind. Someone you won't mention, but he has scored a goal penalty for the LA Galaxy, so keep that in mind. But yeah, LAFC's kids definitely did put a little bit of their hold onto the game, something we weren't expecting considering the Galaxy's first team lineup. But luckily enough, Galaxy able to get the victory, and obviously there were other moments that kind of let us forget about that first half.
Let's just check out the chat. Choi writes, bro, they got a whole week before playing Leon. That excuse is invalid. First of all, Choi, I apologize for using a surfer accent. I'm sure you sound different than that. But, well, I mean, look, like I wrote about it myself in the Striker. LAFC, this game was about them protecting their legacy a little bit. Now, imagine what would have happened if they had won. They had just replicated that feat against a USL side in Monterey Bay, but they were at home. They had the momentum, and for the first 45 minutes, it was looking not too good for the Galaxy. So it kind of, it was sometimes you take a risk and you understand the risk, and that's how I feel about how Tarundolo did it. Pros and cons. Let's see. I mean, Alex, Tyler Boyd, man, he was immense. The Galaxy in the first half, they could not transition to save their lives. The Galaxy backline, excuse me, the LAFC backline, there were a bunch of youngsters, apparently two 17-year-old center backs, and what do you want to do in that situation? You want to test them, but by not being able to transition, you had those kids on easy street. But then the second half was a different story, Alex.
Yeah, I mean, you had the wingers as Raheem Edwards and Memo Rodriguez. Memo Rodriguez, you know what you're going to get, a guy who's not going to, stretch the field often, but he's a good support player, somebody who's, good in the build-up. Raheem Edwards, I think we've seen this experiment of him being out wide. It hasn't really led to anything. Obviously, we know in his career he's played as a right midfielder, left midfielder. But as a winger for the LA Galaxy, he's just not that player. He doesn't really have that off the ball pace. He kind of reminds me of Douglas Costin a little bit in the way that he's slow off the ball. He needs the ball in order to get going. And, if you're a winger, and especially for Greg Vanny, what he demands, a lot of off the ball movement, that work rate to win balls back as well, press people when needed and be structured well defensively. Edwards' defensive, I think, has gotten a lot better. And obviously, I think that's his stronger suit. But as an attacker, he just didn't add much. He played at his natural position of left back, or in the second half once Julian Aude came out of the game. I think he was dealing with some groin tightness, so Vanny wanted to play safe on that guy. But yeah, Raheem Edwards' experiment as a winger, it's not going to work. Just from the eye test alone, I don't think this is going to provide much to the Galaxy attack. So having Tyler Boyd out there, somebody who can play on either side, who's good on both feet, can run for a while, can go one-on-one with anybody. He was such a game changer. And immediately, 4 minutes on coming onto the pitch, he hits that strike and, he scores. And, he's becoming somewhat of an LAFC killer now, I guess. 2 goals in 2 games, kind of being, the real replacement of Samuel Grandsir. You do see a little bit of the parallels in their game a bit. So it was nice to see Tyler Boyd score. Again, he's going to really need to be important this upcoming game against Charlotte. He's the only winger on this team that can really be a danger threat. And I think we've seen a lot of glimpses from Tyler Boyd, but we need to see it all come together for a decent amount of games. And I think him putting up goals and assists is what's needed right now for the Galaxy to climb up the table. I mean, Chicharito's not firing on all cylinders. Ricky Puig has been good, but he's not going to be a guy to get many touches in the box. Memo Rodriguez as well, he's been all right, but again, he's not going to do much as a winger. So Tyler Boyd, that burden kind of has to fall on him, and I think we really need to see him elevate his game and really elevate in becoming a keystone guy, somebody who we can rely on to get goals and assists. Because right now, scoring against LAFC is great, but you want to score against all the other teams in MLS, and right now that's what matters for the Galaxy, if we're being honest, at this point in the season.
Yeah, you're probably tired of me saying this, but my thing with Boyd was that he had this potential, and at the beginning of the season, you could see that he just wasn't fit. And if you go a couple of years abroad and you don't get much playing time, my thing was as the season progressed, he was going to improve, and we're seeing that, and that's awesome. That was my only pro. There's rather a few things that were bugging me. Speaking of repetitive themes, the Galaxy struggled to create clear-cut chances. Now, Alex, Vanny was, he was candid last week. He was pretty pissed off about it. He vented about how the team needed to be precise, about how they weren't being precise enough. And candidly, he admitted it's a personnel issue, and that's part of it. But, that's not a flattering criticism of your team. It means that either the system is inefficient, which might be true, or again, like I said before, they don't have enough speed, and you saw it in the first half. You saw the goals. Ricky Puig, man, dude either scores bangers or just late arriving like tap-ins, no in between. If the XG is any higher than .03, he doesn't want it, and that's hilarious to me. There are a lot of things hilarious about this game. It was an El Trafico, for crying out loud. You want to talk hilarious? Like me and Alex and Justin. We're sitting there, Ricky scores the goal, and then, he goes and does the shirt thing, and then none of us can actually see what's going on because the press box at the bank, we were just looking at like a window. It's hard to explain, but, we were just sitting there just all nonchalant, like, ooh, well, I guess Ricky must have, gotten carried away for a second, and then only afterwards did we discover that, in fact, he did that crazy celebration, which, we'll talk about later. for me, the rivalry, as long as you keep it in the rivalry, that's what makes it fun. And we can. You had fans on both sides who were just screaming and yelling. And the thing that cracked me up a little bit is in the morning, just everybody online was just feisty. LAF complaining about how Ricky was celebrating in front of a bunch of kids. Ricky clarified later that he saw it as it was more of a celebration towards the 3-2-5-2, which he said it was disrespectful or can be disrespectful sometimes, and I love that. And then you go to the. I didn't even hear it, Alex, but we were both down there. We were talking to Ricky, and then as most people know, Giorgio Chiellini, he walked by and then he just yelled pasayo, or which is clown for Spanish. And again, we were both there. Like it wasn't like
You
a
said that
like
so wrong. Payaso.
payaso. There we go. Sorry.
Pasayo.
Pasayo. No, dude, you're gonna get me in trouble, man. But see,
That's why I'm here.
The Duolingo teaches me that you got to practice, man, even if it's on a live pod. So I want, all right, moving on. Yeah, one negative, Javi, Mr. Chicharito. Man, sometimes I think that guy just needs to go bowling for a few days or something. Because when he gets worked up, it's almost like he's got the world on his shoulders. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, again, it's kind of a discussion whether is he in bad form or is this just who he is now. And I think we genuinely have to start having that discussion more because all season long, it's kind of felt like he's been like this. Like something's off where you would expect him to be lethal, he's not. He is not. He's blunt. Where you expect him to put the team ahead, hold the ball up, be helpful in attack, he just hasn't been that consistently. And I was part of my thinking process was he hasn't played in a while. Obviously, he was injured for a bit. So I gave him, a good amount of games, right? I think it was great to see him score against Austin, and I'm like, okay, good. We're seeing a bit more of the Chicharito we know and love. But since that game, it's just been nothing but regression and the same things over and over again to where now I'm fully convinced, he's not the same player. He's regressed a lot. Technically, he's just not the same when it comes to when the ball gets at his feet, when he gets touches in the box, and when he needs to control the ball from, those through balls from Ricky Puig or Brugman from the midfield, right? Now I'm kind of just like, this is just who he is now. I believe every game we're seeing, it's going to get, what we're seeing now where he's squandering these chances. And from a player who's, I think, the third highest paid player in Major League Soccer, like, you don't want to see that. And the fact that he was back this season because he met a goal tally last year is definitely interesting. For me, I wouldn't consider that a metric when it comes to, when they originally signed him. I don't really want to get into that, but I just personally think, anybody can have a good stretch of form and anybody can be the guy in the stretch of games. And we saw that for Chicharito, but, eventually, especially a player his age, that regression happens. And when you're a guy who's so reliant on service and everybody else around you, when you're regressing and you can't, be the same impactful player on the ball, then it's extremely hard to be somewhat helpful. And I think, obviously with the team's struggles to put the ball in the back of the net, I feel like benching him for Dejan Joveljic for a couple of games, it might be the solution, in my opinion. We know with the Dejan, he gets the fire and he, gets all pumped up to come into the games in the second half. And I think we kind of need Chicharito to kind of feel that a little bit for a good stretch of games. And I think Joveljic, although he hasn't, led the Galaxy to winning results when he starts, I just feel he could just be a lot better of a finisher when those chances come by. And, that's just kind of what I feel right now. And it's definitely something that I'm thinking about a lot. Because, again, this guy is the third highest paid player in MLS. And the Galaxy need Chicharito to be firing on all cylinders in order for them to start climbing the table.
Yeah, that heavy touch just kills me. Maybe it's time for Javi to embrace the mental part of his game a little bit. Maybe he does need a little bit of a rest. He is a very old player by standards. He's 35. He might need a little bit of a rest.
Yeah, if I'm correct, he's going to turn 36 in the summer, so around July.
So that wouldn't be crazy at all. Crazy might be the wrong word, but for my next point, which is that on a side note, Javi participated in a mental health panel today. Now, I'm sad that I don't really get to talk about it because we just got the email like an hour ago, but I covered last year's talk, and man, it was like outside of like the game and everything we're talking about, like, it was a very cathartic experience. There were things that he spoke about that I thought were useful for all of us to know. So, I'm gonna listen to it when I get the chance. And what I might do is, maybe we'll talk about it in the pod. Maybe I'll do a standalone, just 10 minutes, just talking about it. But that might be just what Javi needs to sit down with. I forgot his name, Mondo. I forgot the dude's. Sorry, but um, when I spoke to him, he was very, very good, and it might be very cathartic for Javi himself to just sit down for an hour, talk about his feelings, talk about his emotions, talk about his vulnerability. I know just listening to it in advance, he's gonna be talking about his struggles this year, and he might the wheels might be turning his head a little bit, and sometimes maybe just what you need is to embrace the mental side of your game. So I'm still holding out hope for Javi, but yeah, there are plenty of shenanigans during El Trafico, but the Galaxy pulled off the win, and now
I will
they
say
will be.
though that for this one, again, I think let's be honest, the Galaxy really haven't been tested in the CS Open Cup run yet. They're gonna play I think Real Salt Lake on June 7th, so they're gonna be really tested there. I think. Obviously against Seattle, you're playing against and mostly a team made up of MLS Next Pro. Same thing with LAFC. It's kind of hard to determine how much weight you want to put on their game so far, and I feel like that's something I'm debating a lot when assessing their run to the Open Cup at the moment. So, I think that's something to really think about. Just how much weight are we putting on these results and victories, and how much did the Galaxy really, kind of earn it? Because let's be honest, against Seattle, there were moments where Seattle could have came back, scored a couple of goals, but they were able to clean up their mistakes, right? Obviously good, but those signs are there. Same thing with LAFC, right? They had a shaky first half, but able to kind of come away in the second half because their quality shined. Against
Yeah, I made
RSL,
it.
will we see that again, or will they get punished? So it's a big debate for me how much we should really, kind of not necessarily like praise, because obviously they did a good job winning the game, but how much weight do we put on this being a high quality performance? And in my opinion, right now these performances haven't been the best quality, but they get the job done, and that's what matters in a knockout competition.
Yeah, I made a very half-assed attempt at doing a narrative. Are the Galaxy back? And it's like, no, they're not back. Let
No, they're
them
not.
win a few games, and then we'll decide about that. You're right. They are playing RSL. In fact, 2 games in the span of 8 days. May 31st, and then back again on June 7th. The good news for the Galaxy is that RSL will be on short rest for that seventh game. June 7th game. So the Galaxy, if there's 8 games in between and nothing else, they can just simply play their starting 11 both times, maybe perhaps
Mm-hmm.
with a wrinkle or two to throw off Pablo Mastroeni. And he's a bright coach, man. And RSL it's not that they're underrated, because I think the talent isn't up there with some of the other teams, but he's done a great job with there's the anonymous survey that the Athletic does. There was one quote about a manager who said that Mastroeni is just creating like miracles out of nothing out there. And as far as I'll say about their team, Andres Gomez, he's this up and coming star. He's Colombian. They're the most direct team in the league. That might be a problem against a Galaxy team that sucks at rest defense. So, if RSL just takes it to them over the course of 90 minutes at altitude, you're right. For the full squad, yeah. So this will be another opportunity for Vanny, perhaps, to see what what he can bring in terms of his coaching chops, and maybe we'll see some slight adjustments. Maybe we'll not. Maybe we'll see Douglas Costa. Maybe we'll see Efra. We've got attackers that we almost forget even exist, right? So who knows about that? But yeah. And then this weekend, obviously, we have LA playing Charlotte at home, 7:30 MLS Season Plus. Nashville, they were the ones that last played Charlotte, and they set out a diamond formation, and that really stifled Charlotte's ability to really create anything. This presents an opportunity for the Galaxy and for Greg Vanney, because if they just stick to their game plan, don't really overcomplicate things, they are the best team in the league at bossing possession. If they take their identity, their game style, dare I say, trust the process, I think they can come out with 3 points.
Yeah, I mean, I think Charlotte last game against Nashville kind of did put up a fight. Like those, I think two goals behind Mukhtar. One was deflected off the defender, and the other one was a set piece penalty. So it's not like this was like a game where they got destroyed at. I think Charlotte did have a good run of form a little bit. I think three games where they won, didn't taste defeat, but they're a tough team. And I think it's gonna be really interesting to see kind of how the Galaxy does because Charlotte are a team that do struggle defending wingers, and we know this Galaxy team doesn't really have elite wingers. So we'll see how that goes. Like I said earlier, I think Tyler Boyd really needs to put a stamp on this game and on the league for the LA Galaxy because he's in going forward from midfield, he's the only bright spot that I see. And I think uh, you just need to get something out of him, whether that's goals or assists. You don't want him to be just a guy who's dangerous. You want him to be a guy who's lethal, and I think the Galaxy need that. Midfield, obviously, I think going to be a good battle. Ricky Puig, after kind of having a good game against LAFC, can you back it up against guys that are a bit older who have got more experience under the belt, right? So I think that would be fun to watch. I'm really interested to see just kind of how this Galaxy backline kind of adjusts. Obviously, getting their third clean sheet of the season, or for Jonathan Klinsmann, it was his third clean sheet. He had a good performance. I don't think Vanny's gonna put him in again, but definitely interesting to see that goalkeeping competition kind of heat up a little bit because Jonathan Klinsmann just seems Jonathan Klinsmann and Jonathan Mon both seem to have these games where they're just spectacular at times, but not really consistent enough to be considered in the upper echelon of goalkeepers in MLS. So it's so funny how those two goalkeepers are very similar in their own ways. But I'm really looking forward to this game. I think it's a winnable game. Obviously, Charlotte are traveling across the country to the Galaxy. They lost in the Open Cup to I think it was the Pittsburgh Riverhounds. I think that's who they lost to. No, that was Columbus against Birmingham. They lost to Birmingham, I think. Birmingham Legion. So they also kind of need that win to kind of get that morale boost for their squad. So I think it'll be a fun game. We know the Galaxy are a good team at home, and I think they'll definitely put their stamp on the game. Just again, limit those defensive mistakes, be lethal, and when the ball's in the box, when you got your big, signings, Chicharito, when you got those big money players, when they have the ball in the box, just put that chance away. And again, like you said, I think the Galaxy team just defensively needs to be better at their rest defense. In moments where they lose the ball unexpectedly, they need to immediately be ready to kind of just be in their defensive shape.
Yeah, I love Klinsmann and Bond. It's almost a bit of a throwback to Matt Reese and Kevin Hartman, just two quality keepers to the point where, you can't really go wrong putting either one in goal. And when they're both on their games, they're certainly at that level. Yeah, Alex, well, tell you what, man, it's 7 o'clock. And that means we got to go. We both live exciting, busy lives. I'm sure this guy's going to be out till 3 in the morning. I'll be out till 4 in the morning. We'll be out doing all sorts of crazy stuff that you guys don't even knew about. Or not. We'll see what happens. But my name is Mike Gray. I am the LAFC and Galaxy columnist for The Striker. Alex Ruiz is our fine beat writer for The Striker. Subscribe to The Striker. Read our content. Read his content. Read my content. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Take it easy, everybody. Have a good night. We'll see you at the stadium.